Alright, as you can see here, I've got the lower plate from the center console here. I've stripped it entirely of all of the soft touch paint from the factory, and then I've cleaned it off with rubbing alcohol, so there's absolutely no grease or anything on that. So I'm going to test this LVP finisher in BMW black out on this lower piece here, and then see if I like it enough to do the shift panel with it. Here's the lower test plate that surrounds the cup holder in the BMW X6, and this is my test plate to see what this ColorBond LVP refinisher was like to paint with. And when I first painted it, along the bottoms here, because of how I painted it, as you saw, I had that flat on the cardboard. It really started to get really gritty along the lower edge here, and I was really not happy with that. It was not touchable. And so what I actually did is I took a pair of jeans, and I used that pair of jeans to buff the edges where it was getting gritty and where it was getting really rough. I buffed that down, and then the entire piece was a heck of a lot smoother then. And then I did a loading final spray coat with this LVP refinisher, so the entire piece was actually glistening with wetness. And when it dried really, really smooth. And you can kind of tell by zooming in here, that's actually a very smooth, very touchable, and very hard feeling surface. So I am going to go ahead and shoot the shifter panel or shifter plate in that same technique. 3 or 4 coats, not really caring if it's going to be rough or not. And then I'm going to buff down the entire panel with jeans, and then do one final coat, loading that final coat with the LVP refinisher, and see how that goes. All right, here's the shift plate and why it is that I'm going to repaint this shift plate. As you can see, the soft touch finish is coming off of most of it. Bubbling, scratching, just getting worn off. The rest of it's in pretty good shape though, but I do want to keep my car looking like new, so we're going to repaint this one. I'm going to use some acetone here, and I'm using the shape of the bowl to my advantage. I'm just going to pour a little bit of acetone into this little change or key fob well here, and just routinely dab that with my paper towel and spread it around and let it soak in for several minutes. You can see the job that this acetone nail polish remover is doing to this soft touch paint. You can see on the bottom that it's like already just kind of turning that finish into like a sheet of goo. So a little bit of patience, you'll get it. Ugh. So there's all the soft touch paint that's come off of my shifter panel here, which as you can see is completely denuded of any and all paint. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and paint that. Hold can vertical to the surface that you're spraying, and they mean it, because when I was spraying the lower plate, the areas where the spray was not attacking or going directly onto the surface in a perpendicular, it actually became pretty rough, the finish of the paint. So what I'm going to be doing with this particular shifter panel, our shifter plate, is I'm going to be worried about this change tray or key fob tray, and hoping that because of all of the edges go down straight, almost horizontal to the oncoming paint, that it's going to be rather rough. So we'll see how that winds up. And then you might ask yourself, well, why not, if we just strip off all of the soft touch paint, can't we just use the plastic that we shed all of that soft touch paint from? And as you can see, it's actually rather shiny. The finish is not consistent from one part of the plate to the next, and it's just really shiny, and if you're piloting something, the last thing you want is light shining back in your face off of whatever parts. That's why on some of the old airliners, you used to see that black paint on the nose, on the top of the nose, right around the flight deck, because if it weren't anything but the flattest of flat black, it could stand a chance of reducing a pilot's visibility. So that's why we're painting this BMW black. All right, that plate is now reinstalled back into the BMW X6 E71. Right there, there it is. I love the finish. The finish is really great. It's very consistent. It's nice and matte. I did run into that problem where doing 3 or 4 coats left the surface quite gritty and not very friendly to the touch. So I also did the jeans buff. I buffed it down after 4 coats with jeans, and then I went in for a final coat. And with that final coat, what I did is I just loaded the finish, this entire surface with the paint, with the LPV Refinisher, so that the entire plate looked glossy and was wet with paint. Of course, making sure that it didn't run. But as it dried really nice and smooth. It feels just like the original BMW Soft Touch. If I had a bone to pick with LPV Refinisher, it would be this. As you've been seeing throughout my video, I've been showing you this lower plate here, which is the cup holder plate. And as you can see, this is the brand new one. I was showing you and also testing this LPV Refinisher on the old one that I pulled out. So this is a brand new one. This is a BMW part, and as you can see, there is a little bit of a discrepancy in the finish here. The BMW part is got like a little bit of a satiny finish to it, and the LPV Refinisher is quite matte. I would almost say it's like a lunar matte or dead matte. But if you do both of these parts, I actually prefer this lunar, like this dark matte, over the kind of satiny BMW matte. It looks really kind of space age. But I mean, if that's the only bone I have to pick, I think the next step is to essentially join you. It's now September 25th, 2020. The next step is to join you September 25th, 2021, and that's going to happen at the snap of a finger. Well, here we are 8 months after having sprayed the shifter panel here with LVP Refinisher. And it's 8 months instead of a year as I'd promised because, well, today I sold the car. So I've got to do this review now since I won't have access to the panel anymore after today. As you can see, by and large, for any kind of a spray coating for an interior panel, the LVP Refinisher is actually doing pretty well. I also sprayed some components on my car with Plasti Dip, which were the like the fog light surrounds. And just from a few months of Plasti Dip on the fog light surrounds on the front of my X6 facelift, E71 facelift, I can tell I wouldn't want to use it in the interior because you simply, it wears and you can't touch it. Now, this is a medium traffic area panel, and by and large, it's been doing like really, really well. It's very touchable. There's no fear of this like coming off or chipping or anything like that if I put my keys down in here. But one thing that I had noticed, and I brought up in an earlier segment of this video, is the scratches where fingernails will come in contact with the LVP Refinisher. I mean, they're light scratches, kind of like marring, but by and large, outside of buying an entire replacement panel, I do believe that this replacement panel lists on places like FCP Euro, BMW Parts Hub for about $160 to $170. So for the cost of this LVP Refinisher, which did come in, quote, BMW black, well, I don't know if it's necessarily BMW black. It's certainly a kind of a matte satiny black. It sprays on really matte, but after a couple months, it kind of becomes quasi-satiny. But I don't think it's BMW black. They just call it that. I think when they put it into a Ford can, it's called Ford
If you want your car looking brand spanking new, the panel, then clearly a paint or any kind of refinisher spray is not what you want. You'll just want to buy the panel. But considering this car has 60,000 miles on it, I didn't have any problem, trying out this LVP refinisher spray. And I would say on a scale from 1 to 10, I would give this an 8. And therefore, on an older car, I'd be inclined to use this LVP refinisher, instead of buying an entire new panel. So yeah, 8 out of 10. It's good. It still has, the inherent weaknesses of a spray where it can topically scratch, all just kind of a cosmetic scratch. But yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. I'd do it again on a high mile car. That's it.